Ha ha! It's me, Dave. Isn't that fun little 30-second thing? Countdown was weird. How's everybody doing tonight? Hi from all over the place, the US and I see even Canada. Woohoo! If you hear a little bit of echo, sorry about that. I got a couple of phones set up and I don't know when it comes to the microphone stuff. So anyways, it's pretty warm in here today, so I decided not to wear some nice shirts. So you're all going to have to put up with seeing me in my big, bright yellow measuring tape suspenders. And I just don't care because, I'm a trendsetter. I set style. It's what I do. So I encourage you all to get some awesome suspenders and be like a real train man. Oh, yeah. So happy Monday, everybody. Well, I would, Wayne, but kind of need to see or reach the things around me here. Anyways, well, I wonder if I mute the computer. Hey, can you hear me? Yeah, I better turn down the. There, that's better. So what you're seeing there is our sample, or one sample, of the legacy Genset switcher diesel locomotive. That's the first thing I'm going to talk about tonight. And I also have a second camera set up. Look at that. Man, this is fancy. So I got 3 cameras set up. So before I show you the features up close with that guy, let me turn on the power, start the one up on the track. Hopefully y'all can hear that just well. So a little history on our Gensets. We did the Genset a decade ago at this point, or maybe even more. And I have one. I have the UP version. And it was a really great engine that, had its share of a couple of problems that we wanted to address here with this newer release. So the Vision Line version that we did first did have 3 different smoke units, one for each stack. So, Peter, I turned the engine down. I'll turn it back up here soon. But so the Vision Line version did have 3 different smokestacks. Now, for a little history on the actual Genset, the reason they call it Genset is a set of generators. So there's 3 of them here. And that was for emissions purposes, basically. They would use these in switch yards. They still do, I believe, especially out in the Los Angeles area with Union Pacific. So you get 3 different smokestacks here, one for each of the generators. And one thing to note is that the legacy version here you see will be just like the Vision Line version in that it will come with, number 1, the straight smokestacks that you can install here, 1, 2, 3, but also come with the little straight smokestack that had the flapper valve. And I always thought the flapper valve was really cool because it can bounce up and down as you turn the smoke units on and off. So pretty neat. Anyways, this one is similar to the legacy version that we did after the Vision Line version. And in terms of how it's similar, it has just one smoke unit that pipes to all 3 smoke ports. So that's kind of what people expect most. One issue that Lionel saw when we did the Vision Line version is that people didn't understand that the let me remove this other camera just for a moment. Man, these electronics just doing me no favors tonight. How about now? All right, where was I? I need an audio person. So, back to where I was. This version is similar to the legacy version that we did after the Vision Line version, in that it only has one smoke unit, and that smoke unit will be piped to all three of the exhaust stacks. And the reason we did that is for simplification. A lot of people did not understand that there's only supposed to be two on at moderate speed, three on at high speed, and at idle and slow speeds you would only have one on. So with this version, you're going to have smoke coming out of all three stacks or not at all, and that just simplifies it for most users. The big changes, I should say, for this version over the Vision Line version and the first legacy version. The biggest change, I would say, is moving away from the die-cast shell and using an ABS plastic shell. So we paid to convert the tooling over to be able to do that. Now, the reason that I had to do that was because we now have Bluetooth in our engines. Now, normally with a Bluetooth signal, you have to have some kind of open air pathway to that Bluetooth antenna. So, for example, in our steam engines, there's usually some open air under the boiler between the frame, or there are in other diesels that we've done. For example, the upcoming UP turbine, we'll just put a big hole in the floor right below the Bluetooth antenna so that can have plenty of connection and distance, but that just wasn't possible with this engine. There wasn't enough room under the frame to put a hole, and there obviously we didn't want to put a giant hole in the shell. So what we had to go with is changing the shell over to plastic. Now, when we changed it over to plastic, the issue that presented was in traction, because it greatly lightened up the engine. The original version only had a single motor. It did not have dual motors. One truck was a dummy. But as those with that original version know, the engine still had a lot of pulling power because the shell was die cast, so it gave it a lot of traction. So what we did in the newest version is add the second motor. So now both trucks are powered. Both trucks have a motor. We had to revise the cab a little bit to be able to fit that in there. Let me show you here with the other camera. I can just pull the shell right on off. So as you can see, hopefully, maybe I can move a little closer to that camera. But where this new motor is, this is the new motor here, and it's up in the cab. Here's the cab of the engine. And you can see the shroud that goes around the motor, and that conceals it from being able to see the motor and flywheel from the outside of the cab. If you look here through the window of the cab, you'll see that there still are crew figures, and there's one on each side. And there's actually even still the detail on the back wall, which would be right here. If you look in there, you can still see the hopefully that's better. You can still see the detail on the back, which is kind of where the electrical panel would be in the locomotive. But there is, in the center of the cab, you will see the rounded baffle that covers that motor. So that's just one of the compromises we had to make with the new model. But now that it has two motors, it's got plenty more pulling power, even with the plastic shell. So it'll be similar to a standard diesel that we do, SD70 Ace or whatever like that, in terms of pulling power, because you still have the die-cast truck, die-cast frame, die-cast fuel tank with the dual speakers, and there is the track IR over here as well. So pretty neat. Now, originally the track IR was kind of up here, and you could probably see the hole there. It was inside the engine, but a lot of it got blocked due to the fuel tank sticking down. So we moved it up here a bit and made it external, put it in between these two toolboxes to hide it. So it's a lot more robust and a lot more reliable when you go over the track IR. So that kind of gives the basic outlines of this engine. I do enjoy the fact that it does have fixed pilots. There are no swinging pilots. The truck itself the couplers themselves are body mounted, and these will come with KD compatibility if you want to change it over to scale couplers. And back into the electronics, you will see that in the center here on the frame, it's kind of barren, but that's because we had to make room, and you can see the smoke unit up here and the really long smoke funnel that connects all three of the generators' smokestacks together. And then we have our new legacy electronics board here. And another thing that I always enjoyed about the Gensets is that on the engineer side of the engine, you flip down this panel, and that's where you'll find your switches. So they're not all labeled in this one. This is just an engineering prototype sample. You will have a smoke on-off switch, a run program switch, and a Bluetooth on-off switch. And those will be found there in that panel. And I think it's pretty neat. It's held in there by magnets. And the panel on the other side does move or open as well, I believe. I remember it opening. I just have no fingernails. And inside there, it's just details. There's just some detail, what you would expect to see if you open these up. There's no switches or nothing in there. So pretty neat. So now that I've showed you kind of the guts of one of these samples, there we go. Let me switch back over to, move that camera, switch this back over to the engine. Oh, I don't want to be the big one. I want the train to be the big one. Ooh, there we go. There, you don't even need to see my face. Let's just play with the train. All right. So let me turn the sounds back up, and we will go ahead and play with this guy.
Yardmaster, all handbrakes are knocked off. Can I roll? Over. Hold for my clearance. Tower out.
There we go. I'll just use that one. Now let's turn the smoke on so you can see that working. And give it just a few seconds for it to heat up. It does take a bit, but we'll start to see that smoke coming out. And you can see it there in the background out the center stack. It doesn't show up well on white backgrounds, but there you go. Now you can see all three of them going. And this is at high smoke. If you think it's really crazy high, there's obviously low and medium levels of the smoke. I just turned it all the way up because I like a lot of smoke. But what I want to do, and one thing I want to talk about that was really tricky with this engine, since these are all new legacy electronics, we had to figure out how to do the sounds of the three generators in the engine kind of over top of one another almost. So as you go up through the notch levels of the engine, you'll hear the second generator kick in and then eventually the third generator kick in, all while all three are increasing RPM. And it was a lot of fancy work from our sound engineer to figure that out, and he did a great job. So let's go ahead and run up through those just so we can hear it. So that's pretty neat. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it on the video. But as you increase, you hear the second and third units kick in, and go right to the higher RPM level. So that sounds pretty neat. Let me shut it down just so you can hear what the shutdown and startup sequences sound like, pretty much on the generators. So pretty neat. And another feature that these have are the standby or sleep mode. Now I'd have to let it sit here for a few minutes to be able to demo that, and I'm just going to keep talking because that's what I do. But if the engine's at idle, sitting there running, and you don't move it and address it in any way, the engines or the generator will kind of shut itself down, and that's to conserve fuel like the prototypes do. And then after a certain amount of time, a minute or two, it will automatically start itself back up as the real one would, to monitor its battery levels as it's sitting there idling. So it kind of functions like the real one in that sense. I will say that the one sound that we have not done yet is crew talk. If you listen to the crew talk here, my lights go out. If you listen to the crew talk here.
Dispatcher, air test is complete. Can I move? Over. You can take the lead. Tower out.
That's the generic switcher dialogue that we've been using. The same two characters we've been using in our switcher engines for quite a few years now. And in the next month, we're going to record all new characters for the switcher dialogue and mix it up because it's time for some new characters and some variety. So when these do ship, you will be hearing new characters in the engine. And lastly, let's go through the bells and whistles, as so to speak. One of the biggest upgrades on the newest legacy electronics is the ability to give us the 5 different horns and also the 5 levels of pitch on the bell. So let's go through the bell first. So that's cool. That's the bell. Now I'll go through all the different horns. You'll recognize that horn. That's the horn we put in the original release a decade ago. But we got 4 more in there. That's a pitched up version of the same horn. And just for those asking, to get the different horns and the different bells, all you do on the cab 2 remote is hit aux 1 and then horn, or aux 1 and then bell. So let's go with number 3 here. Ooh. I just realized what I did. So this is still an engineering prototype, and we have the engineering prototype sounds in it. So what this does is it has the original Genset horn in it with the 5 different pitch levels that we normally create, and then we have all 5 of those pitch levels that we can choose from. So we put that in the engine to make sure there's no crackling or any artifacts that would make it sound terrible. But this will likely come with 2 or 3 versions, pitched versions of this horn, and then it will come with probably 2 other just completely different horns. So, just so you know. But again, engineering prototype, and that was my goof. And one thing to note, again, let me move this guy. Going backwards, but it does have the number board lights up here. You probably saw the cab light illuminate when it stopped, like that. Obviously, it's got headlights, but these also have ditch lights. So in the forward direction, hopefully on the video you can see them, the ditch lights are down here. And they do flash when you move. Pretty neat. So that is the Legacy Genset. And the code will be due for us in another month or so. Hopefully Ryan chimed in and said when these are shipping, but I'm pretty sure they're later in the summer, July, August timeframe. So those will be pretty neat to ship and see and look at all the differences compared to the old versions. And it's nice just to have a a switcher diesel engine that's different than the normal diesels we run. I kind of always like switcher engines, both steam and diesel. And the one switchers that we run quite often in diesel are the things like the NW2, the SW7, etc. And those are cool little engine switchers, but this guy's about twice the length. And it's a really neat prototype in my opinion. So look forward to that. The next thing I want to talk about tonight, I mean, man, I'm already over 20 minutes. I'm not even on subject number 2. But I want to talk about the 153IR accessory activator. Let me turn back on my other camera here. There's my big strapping belly and all that. But here we go with the 153IR. I'm sure a lot of people watching are familiar with the 153IR, but I want to discuss where we are now as a company with them and some of the changes we've made, as well as the production status on them. So I'm holding a sample of the newest version, and this newest version is actually shipping right now. They left on the boat the first week, I believe, of February. So that means they'll be getting here sometime this month, probably shipping up to dealers, at the end of this month. And it's been a couple of years since we had them. And the reason that they've taken so long to come back is because we had to redesign the electronics. The electronics in the old version, for one, had obsolescence issues. There were a lot of components that were just no longer available, not being made. And number 2, there were some reliability issues with the older version. So we redesigned the electronics from the ground up, and hopefully nobody will even be able to notice. So what the 153IR is basically an accessory activator. You can use this instead of an isolated activation track. And what it does is it has IR sensors behind this red pane here that beam out. And when a train goes by on the track, it activates the accessory that is connected to it. So if we open the main panel here on the front, this is where you wire in your power and your accessory. So if you want to power this guy from track power, which is pretty common for command users. You use these 2 wires here. They come with the spade connectors, or the quick disconnect connectors, actually, and you can hook them to the bottom of any standard piece of fast track. And that way, the 153IR and the accessory will use the power coming from the track. If you're a conventional user, meaning you use the handles on the transformer and you're constantly varying the voltage of your track, You instead would probably want to use aux power or a accessory power transformer that has. Is there no audio? Can people hear me? Should be able to hear me. Anyways, sorry about that. Again, I'm not good with audio on this show. I have been pretty good at the video, but I don't know why the audio. I don't know. So anyways, for the conventional user, you'd want to use an accessory transformer. And you can switch that. It says track power versus aux power. You just flip the switch. That way you put it in aux power, and then you would wire your transformer to this connector here. It's pretty easy to wire them up. Ooh, this video's backwards. What you do is you just kind of pull up on the orange tab, which will be spring, and then you insert the wire, and when you let go, it'll crimp itself down onto the wire. So pretty easy to wire. And then when you have it in aux mode, it'll run off that constant accessory transformer power. That way you can run your trains in conventional mode and vary your track voltage without worrying about interrupting your accessory power. Now over here, you see the 4-pin block. And what that is where you wire in your accessory. So the first two here is going to be your accessory power, your accessory ground. That's just where you're going to wire in the power that you want to go to the actual accessory itself. So the 153 IR essentially works as a switch. It's not going to provide the power to the accessory. You have to wire that in. So what you can do if you're using an accessory transformer is you can just hook it here and then transfer it over here into the accessory power terminals. The last two pins are the on-off pins for your accessory itself. So you have normally open, which is marked as NO, and then you connect it using the accessory's ground wire or the common wire or the U wire. There's a whole bunch of names for it. And there's also NC, which stands for normally closed. Normally open is the one that you are going to use 99% of the time. So what you would use that for is, say, a gateman. So when the train is coming along the track and it passes the beam, it will send power to the gateman, and he'll pop out of his little shed, turn the light on, or however you set it up, and that's how that'll work. Where you would use the normally open or normally closed pin, which is the last one here, is in a signal. So if you had like a dwarf signal that had both a red and a green light, what you would do is you would hook up the green light to the normally open, or normally closed, I mean, so that when there's no train around, the light's just green, the train can just go, the track's not blocked. You would wire the red to the normally open, normally closed, normally open. Normally open, you would want to be green. So then when the train blocks the IR, it would turn off the green light and turn on the red light. So the red light would be on the normally open. Normally closed. I'm out. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's too late in the day. I'm normally open, normally closed. Dave's just normally dumb. You guys get what I mean, though. And that accessory is in the user manual for this guy. So if you want to not follow along with my stupid rambling, please read the manual. Anyways, I have one of these wired up to my track, and I do want to, yeah, right, Chuck? I need to write it out. I need diagrams here. Normally open, normally closed. Jeez, man. I know this stuff. I just can't talk. This is why they don't put me on camera. So let me turn off this camera and go back to my camera. There we go. And I'm just going to pick this camera up and show you. So what I got here, here's our 153 IR here. So it is wired underneath the track. You can see the black wire there, and that means it's connected straight to track power. So the 153 IR, as long as the track power is on, will get its power. And then over here in the back, you can see where we got the hot dog stand wired into the 153 IR. So I'm going to bring the Genset back through. I do have the volume turned off in the Genset because that's not what we're doing right now. But what you'll notice is that when the engine gets up here and the IR sensors can see it, there they go. There you go. I'm going to stop the engine so you can see it running. So if you stop the train in front of the sensor, the accessory is just going to run as long as you have the train there. So I like the guy here with his hot dog. He can't decide what he wants to do with it. I want ketchup. No, I want mustard. Oh, I forgot the relish. Then you got the little wiener dog over here running around the hydrant, just like my wiener dog I have at home. They don't ever know what they're doing either. But anyways, drive the train away. It's where it breaks it and it turns back off. So that's a neat little demo of how that works. And I just have one of these signals here. This is one of our old school auto crossing gates. And you can hook this up to 153 IR too, so that when your train comes through and it breaks the IR beam, it'll lower the gate and the red lights will come on. And again, there's an example wiring schematics in the manual for the 153 IR that show you how to do that. All right, let me turn that camera feed back off. Let's go talking again about some more of the features on this guy, because this thing is very versatile. It's amazing how this little box can do so much for you. But so, man, I got phones everywhere making noise on me. Go away. So I showed you here behind this first panel is where you wire the guy up. But if you look behind this kind of toolbox guy here, you flip that up, you're going to see two knobs in there. Right. So the sensitivity knob is probably the one most of you guys are asking about, right? You want to know, well, what if this guy's driving through and it's just not tripping it? Or what if the train's coming through and it's so sensitive that it turns off with the gap between engines and cars? Well, you just play with it, right? So you run around your track a few times, you take a little screwdriver or even your fingers, you can reach in there and adjust those knobs and get it just right for that application. So if you want it to stay on even when there's gaps in between the engine and cars, you just play with that sensitivity until it's working just like you want. The other thing is in here, and you'll see next to the sensitivity knob, is what's called time. Time is relevant. But what this does is you, again, just use your finger or a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, to adjust the time. And what that does is it adjusts the amount of time after the train passes. So if you have a train that moves out of view of the 153 IR, but you still want the accessory active for a little bit longer after that. Once the train clears the 153 IR, the 153 IR itself will start a timer. And I think you can do like 30 seconds or something maximum. So it'll do that timer, and when it hits 0, it'll turn the accessory back off. That works really well on things like crossing gates. So if the train clears the 153 IR that's on the other side of the crossing gate, but you don't want the gates to come up when the end of the train, the caboose, whatever, is still going through the crossing. Set your timer, again, just adjust it and play with it a few times until you get it right where you want it, and that'll work out pretty nicely. Great little accessories in it. They're great for layouts that already have kind of the trackage in place. You already have everything screwed down, wired in, ballasted even, and you know how hard it can be to wire a track that's already screwed down, glued down, ballasted. So you can add this without having to pull up your track to add wires and that helps having the accessory power right there. So excited to see these come back again. End of this month, early next month is when we'll get them, and hopefully people will be happy with the redesigned version. All new modern electronics that will not be going obsolete for quite some time. So, yay! That's down as a day for the day. Hopefully the Genset and the 153 IR talk inspired some of you guys to, buy a locomotive, yeah, right? That's what I'm supposed to do, sell you locomotives. But, accessories are also really cool. You fill up your accessory. We've made so many accessories, and we actually have plenty more accessories planned in the future. Starting in next year, you'll see some new accessories that we haven't done before, or some of the older accessories we're bringing back with modern features. It'll be really neat as we try to expand into the operating accessory world, because it just brings a lot of play value and life to your layout, and I'm really excited to get those made and cataloged and then demo it to everybody here on this show. So that's it for tonight. Thanks for listening to me for 38 minutes ramble on and get confused between normally closed and normally open. I really made myself look like a genius there, didn't I? But it's okay, because at the end of the day, I have cool yellow suspenders and none of you do. So really, who's winning at life? All right, everybody. Have a good night and stay safe. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks on the next show. And always make sure on the opposing weeks to tune in to Ryan's Workbench Wednesdays, which happen to fall on Wednesdays. It's amazing how that works. Just making sure there are no questions. Nope, there's not. I think I hit everything up. Cool. All right, guys. See you later.